Hello! Today I have a friend with me to introduce a chapter. Let me present you pa-igulu. Say hello, pa-igulu. Hello! So let's present the chapter now. Chapter 7 of Demon Soul. They were the first to arrive in the kitchen that morning. Brownie didn't check the time, but it was still dark outside. She noticed that the windows were still open, meaning that Dylan was probably still out hunting. She started to prepare Sahel's bottle. He had eaten so few the previous days that he was probably famished. He started to drink it very gluttonously, making her laugh. 2 powers acquired already, and 2 more to go. She was hoping that the next one wouldn't be so tiring, but was convinced of the contrary. She took the bowl out of the cupboard, laid the table, and prepared herself a full bowl of lemon tea and a couple of buttered bread slices. She was taking her first bite when Dylan flew through the window, making Sahel startle and cough. "How many times did I ever tell you to come home by the door?" she said to Dylan, stroking Sahel's back. "Hi, nice to see you too," the vampire answered, closing the window and pulling the curtain. "If you didn't want me to hunt her that way, why didn't you close the window then?" That was a good comment, but Brownie couldn't help laughing, imagining Dylan spinning toward the window and crashing against it like a bird after the glasses just got washed. "Are you laughing at me?" Dylan answered, looking at his clothes to see if he was wearing anything funny. Brownie laughs at contaminated Sahel, who was giggling, looking at the vampire. "No," Brownie said, trying to become serious again. "I was just thinking that what would have happened if I had closed the window. That's all." "Oh," Dylan said. He took a closer look at Sahel. "So here is your little terror," he said. Bring him play with Daciana sometime. She feels a bit lonely during the day." Daciana was a family baby vampire. She was staying in Viorel's room, and not so many of the other children were allowed to visit her. Lots of problems appeared when Viorel had brought her back, especially because she couldn't stay in the sun and the other children tended to be afraid in the dark, so because, contrary to Viorel and Dylan, who could be stealed in order to avoid attacking people, she was too young for that. Once she tried to bite Malena, who had come to play doll with her, and would have done if Viorel didn't step in. From that event, the children were scared of her, and didn't want to play with her, so she stayed with mainly Viorel and Dylan as company. Viorel wanted to preserve her from being hurt by the other children's nasty comment about her being a vampire, and Brownie couldn't blame him. A relationship with you had taken a long time to be accepted, and some people never really accepted it. Having vampires in the house was also a hard point to deal with in the family. That was also one of the reasons why she wanted to keep Sahel away from the other. A demon baby had fewer chances to be as welcome as a normal baby. Especially now that Luna had spread the word about Sahel being a very nasty and ugly demon. Dylan had tried to bite Brownie after being sealed, because she was getting seriously on his nerve. She couldn't blame him for that, really. The comments on her story with you tended to make her particularly sensitive at the time about everything. Dylan was always a good person to spend her nerves on, especially because she couldn't possibly hurt his feelings, as he didn't have any. He was as cold and sensitive as marble, and was really proud of it, or at least telling that he was, according to the meaning of the word. Not about any kind of emotion saturating his body with pride. So that night, after having a very long argument with Isabel about how the presence of a demon full of magical power in her bedroom could possibly hurt the other member of the family, she had gone down to the kitchen to get herself some green tea to help herself calm down. And Dylan was there, just coming back very early from what seems to have been a very good hunting party, according to the dry blood on his short collar and on the more fresh blood leaking on his chin. She had looked at him with a very disdainful look she was always having while arguing with someone, and had started to argue with him, hurting his pride. The adrenaline still followed in his vein from the recent hunt, and the taste of fresh blood still in his mouth. Dylan didn't hesitate a second, and had jumped on her, rushing her on the floor. But as he was on the top of her with his tongue out and ready to bite, a sudden headache had struck him, and he had fell unconscious on the floor. For anyone talking about that now, he would say, a bit shameful, that he just wanted to test to see if the sealing spell was really efficient. But the truth is, he was really sick for almost a week after the attack, and Bronnie came to take care of him, feeling a bit guilty. "Sure," Bronnie answered. "He has been kind of sick for the moment, and he will still have to get 2 more elemental power before it's completely over. I remember when Daciana's fangs started to grow. That was such a pain," Dylan said, making a chair turn and sitting on it back to front. "So far we had the crying period, the scratching period, and the burning period," Bronnie said, stroking Sahel's hair on the top of his head. At the contact, he looked up and pressed his back against her. "Viorel said they are going to fall. I mean Daciana's teeth. That she's got that from her human side. But I'm not too sure myself," Dylan said. Daciana had become a vampire when her mum was human. Daciana had become a vampire when her mum, who was human, had been bitten. That for she had some human characteristic like the possibility to grow up and to see her reflection in the mirror. I don't know, but I wouldn't worry too much about it, if I were you. Growing teeth for the second time is nothing like doing it for the first time," Bronnie answered. "How do you know?" Dylan answered, unconvinced, thinking that growing teeth should have been extremely painful in any case. "Well, I'm human, so I went through it already. All you'll have to do is make her place her teeth under her pillow before going to bed, and replace it with a little present each time, telling her that the little mouse had come to collect it, to make a set of teeth for its very old grandmother," Bronnie said. "That's silly," the vampire answered. "She's never gonna buy it." "But she'll like it a lot," Bronnie answered. "All children like it a lot." "What kind of present?" he asked. "Small things, like a coin or a candy. But you still have about 5 or 6 years to think about it," Bronnie answered. "That's a long time. I mean, 5 years for a human," Dylan said, getting up. "For a human child, it is, yes, a very, very long time," Bronnie said. "Maybe I'll get her something nicer then," Dylan said, walking to the door. "I'd better go back to my den before someone silly decides that it's time for the sun to come in here." As he walked away, Bronnie started to wonder if he actually was as insensitive as he pretended to be. "I think we will have to go back to our den sometime soon too," Bronnie said to Sahel. But when she looked down at him, he was biting in her slice of bread. "Since when can you bite like that?" she said. "Bread," he answered. "I know that's bread. That was mine. Is it yummy?" she answered, half laughing. "Yummy," Sahel repeated, making her laugh. "Well, I just have to prepare another one, I suppose," she said, starting to cut herself another slice of bread. They finished their breakfast before anyone got up. Brownie tidied her dishes in the dishwasher and walked back to the bedroom, thinking about taking a very long and well-deserved nap. "Okay, my little parrot, let's go to bed." She let Sahel down on the bed, but he sat back up and pulled at the children's book laying on the night table. "Dagon, Dagon!" he said happily. I see," Brownie said. "You want a bedtime story first. It's fair, I suppose. A baby shouldn't go to bed without a bedtime story. Anyway." "Bedtime story, Dagon!" Sahel said, trying to hold the book out to her. She took it and laid down near Sahel. "Let me see if I can find something nice with a dragon," she said, turning the page. "Dagon, Dagon!" Sahel said, getting excited. "I see, this one," she said, and she started to read. "Once upon a time, in a country very, very far away." Sahel fell fast asleep before the end of the story. Brownie closed the book, and she fell asleep herself, holding his hand. When she woke up around noon, she found Sahel sitting in the bed, the book open in front of him, pointing at the picture with little cry and turning pages excitedly, like telling a story to himself. He was looking so adorable that she couldn't help hugging him. "Brownie," he said with a strident voice, and he started babbling, telling her a brand new story. "A dagon bun and pinch and dagon poof," and Brownie laughed. "They did all of that?" she asked. Sahel shook his head up and down vigorously, all smiling, and started to babble again. Brownie was feeling exceptionally great after the resting nap, and seeing Sahel so happy and lively after the nightmarish few days was making her heart run with happiness. Brownie sat up and took him on her lap. "What about I read you another story before going for lunch? Would you like that?" she said. Like, Sahel repeated. "Okay then," she added, "let's see." She turned few pages before finding a good story. "That's one of my favorite," she said before starting to read. Sahel was listening patiently, helping her turn the pages when needed. But they needed to interrupt the reading when Grenadine entered the room unaware, without even bothering knocking first. She was holding a plate containing Brownie's lunch, as well as a baby bottle for Sahel and a huge amount of painting material. "Can you help me?" she said. Brownie put the book and Sahel down on the bed and went to the door to take the baby bottle and her plate before the contents slid on the floor. "What is all that?" she finally asked as Grenadine seemed to be preparing to install her easel. "Itomi told me he was way too cute, but that's true, he is," she said, turning suddenly toward Sahel, not answering to Brownie. Sahel was looking at her, shaking his head from side to side, wondering what was going on. "Of course he is," Brownie answered, giving Sahel his bottle. But he was too amused by Grenadine's strange equipment to start drinking. "What are you doing here with all that?" Brownie asked again. "I'm going to draw him, obviously. I never painted a demon before, as you refused to sit for me. So here is the ideal moment for that," Grenadine answered. "Obviously," Brownie sighed. There was no way she could get rid of Grenadine now that she was starting to pick up her brushes and applying her traditional orange paint on her palette. She remembered how Grenadine always wanted to make a picture of you, and how he always strongly refused. It was because of his wings that he was refusing pictures and drawing. He had explained her one day that carrying his wing was like carrying God's curse. He was a descendant of the Nephilim, the fallen angel who had rebelled against God. "You see," he said, as they were sitting on the park seesaw, "a very long time ago, a group of angels rebelled against God. They were called the Nephilim, the fallen angels. When they obviously failed at winning the bloody and murderous war they started, God cursed them, so that their beautiful white angel wings, like Ezekiel's, became just like mine, That way people would recognize them and fear them and know not to associate with them. That's why it has been very difficult for me to make friends until I found you. He smiled a little. So you could have been an angel? Brony had asked. Yes. If my ancestors weren't part of the Nephilim, I would have been, he answered sadly. But you have done nothing wrong. Why do you have to carry a curse like that? Brony asked, holding his hand comfortingly. Because God is not the very nice guy people like to believe he is. When he gets mad at someone, he stays mad for a very long time. Make him stay still. The voice of Grenadine pulled Brony out of her reverie. He is a baby, she answered. Of course he will move. If you want him to be still, you'll have to come back when he's asleep. If you want to draw something livelier, you'll have to concentrate harder. Grenadine frowned. You're right. If I want to draw him well, I need extra concentration as he's so little. She smirked, imagining how Jayden would be proud of her if she could paint well such a difficult topic. Sahel was now drinking his milk heavily as usual, not caring too much about what Grenadine was doing. He had thought at first that with all the things she had brought, something interesting was going to happen, but apparently she was just going to sit there and do nothing. How boring was that? Bruni was just starting to take the first bite in her lunch when someone knocked at the door. She told them to hunt her, but as nothing but a second knock happened, she got up and opened the door. Ethan and Raphael were standing here with something that looked like a very big blue net and some tools. What are you doing? She asked, a bit confused, and they entered the room and turned around the bed, nearly bumping in Grenadine's easel. What we started, obviously, Raphael answered. We better put it on the top of the bed, Ethan said. Obviously, Brony repeated, wondering why everything was so obvious for everybody except for her today. Seeing her questioning look, Raphael added, We are installing a hammock above your bed for Sahel. With this net, so that he doesn't drown himself in his bed at night while getting his power over water. The picture of a blue drawn baby demon were a bit scary, I must say, Ethan said. Brony had almost forgotten about it, and the only thought of it made a shiver run in her back. When getting their power over water, the baby demon were, in the first time, getting so cold that they would freeze themselves to death, and the second time, attracting all the water possible to them, so that the water could stay in their bed if the parents weren't careful enough, and the baby would drown in his sleep. Brony was really grateful that they remembered it, and had found a way of dealing with it before the accident happened. Do you need help? She asked. No, we are just fine. Just eat your lunch, Ethan answered. Brony sat back on the bed and pulled Sahel further away from the boy's working place. Ah, don't make him move more than he actually does, Grenadine complained. Sorry, Brony said, digging in her plate. Sorry, Sahel repeated, making them laugh. He had finished to eat and was pulling the book to him. Don't let him play with books, Grenadine said, giving Brony a clean brush. Here. Why? Brony asked. And what is that for? Give him the brush instead of the book, if you don't want him to be a bookworm later on, Grenadine said very seriously. Brony tried to give Sahel the brush, but he didn't even look at it and started to babble a story again. See, that doesn't work. At the same time, he was born in a library, Brony said. Grenadine sighed. How could such a cutie end up locked in a library later on? But she was too interested in her painting to deal with it right now. The boys installed the hammock in only a few minutes, and they tried it immediately, making Sahel laugh a lot under Grenadine's complaint. It was decided that she would finish her painting before Sahel could stay playing in the hammock, but the little demon's wings turning yellow when he had to get down of it couldn't possibly make any of Grenadine's argument acceptable for Brony, and she had to start everything back from the beginning. Sahel finally fell asleep, rocking in his new bed. Brownie used the occasion to get him more clothes. He was growing up so fast that she almost had to change size every day. For the first time, they both had a very peaceful night. Brownie woke up worried few times, but Sahel was fast asleep each time. She checked his temperature to make sure that everything was fine, and each time it gave just 39.5 degrees as desired. The moonlight was enlightening the room, and she got up to look through the window. For some bizarre reason, she couldn't help thinking about the older Sahel from her dream. She knew it was impossible for him to exist. Little Sahel was just sleeping in her hammock above her head, but she couldn't help thinking about her dream. It was so vivid, so real. It took place where she hadn't seen you, soul, every night since it had been torn away, but the dream had stopped haunting her since the ritual. The new one was not as scary anymore, just feeling a bit dangerous, but filled with hope. She was also wondering why she was so sure Sahel was that boy with her. Maybe that was an artifact of her imagination for spending so much time with Sahel. But she was sure that he was waiting for her somewhere. Sahel started to be cold and to sneeze a lot in the following afternoon. Brownie wrapped him in a warm blanket that she was eating on the radiator. She was also worried that Gideon didn't come back yet. He had said that they may have to attempt the ritual several times to actually fix the dark shadow to the medallion, but she didn't expect him to be away more than a day. What if the dark shadow had escaped and was lost somewhere? She didn't like it much due to how much used dark shadow had hurt him, but she couldn't deny the fact that it was a good protection against forces she couldn't control or understand. The temperature in the room was like hell. She was making her sister bring her an enormous amount of cold drink and was passing a face cloth humidified by cold water on her forehead and neck regularly. Still, Sahel's skin was as cold as ice. He was shaking with cold, and his sweat was often transforming into little drops of ice. Brownie had to clean his eyes and mouth regularly with a hot towel, as ice was forming on his tears and saliva. She had tried to give him a bath, but even cold water seemed to burn him. All she could do was to add hot water bottles in his bed and change them often. She was not bothering checking his temperature anymore. It was like if all warmth had gone away from him, turning his wings' color into a strange icy blue, nearly transparent. He was pulled up, trying to keep warm, repeating "cold, cold" in a very low voice and asking for a story from time to time when he was feeling strong enough. Gideon arrived late this evening. He wasn't alone. Sedana and Taika had apparently insisted to accompany him home and to give his present to Sahel personally. When they entered Brownie's room, they were struck by the heat. Even in the middle of the summer, or especially for the middle of the summer, it was way too warm. But Gideon understood what was going on straight away. The power over water were arriving. He knelt down near the bed, where Brownie was applying a hot towel on Sahel's forehead and cheek. "How is he?" he asked. "He has been better. This morning he was talking a lot, but now he's just so cold." Brownie's voice was feverish, denoting her deep worry for Sahel's health. "I had heard he was terrible," Sedana said, "but I could never have imagined anything like that." Taika pushed him with her elbow, making him stop. Brownie didn't need to be remembered about it. She was already deep in. Taika walked around the room slowly and looked at the little shape huddled up behind the blanket above Brownie's shoulder. She took her magic wand off her sleeve slowly. It was really light, and in a perfect equilibrium with her feminine and gracious hand. It was made of the wood of a very old cherry tree from their house's garden. The tree had that very particular. It was in the center of a pentacle formed by all 5 elements. 5 kilometers from the sea, 5 kilometers from a volcano, 5 kilometers from the old metallurgic mine, 5 kilometers from a mountain where the windmill field had been placed, and 5 kilometers from a crater due to a meteorite crash. It wasn't a small thing to say that the wood in this particular tree had been known for generations as giving birth to very powerful magic wand, and Taika was very proud of her wand. Maybe a little refreshment would do, she said, raising her hand. Brownie looked at her alarmed. It was too late. She could feel the sudden cold due to the displacement of air, but she soon realized that all the hot air of the room had just gathered around Sahel. Ha ha ha, said Anna laughed. My little sister knows a lot of magic tricks, and she always needs to impress the people around. Taika threw him a dark look, making him realize that his last comment was not necessary. Thanks, Brownie muttered. Taika nodded, making her know that it was just basic for her and that she would have done it for anyone. Gideon took the medallion out of his pocket and showed it to Brownie. Look, we locked a dark shadow inside, he said. A pretty good work, I must say. It took us all night and a huge part of the morning, said Anna added. The thing was pretty rebellious. Brownie took the medallion in her hand. Small demon wings were drawn on the top of it. Open it, said Anna said. Brownie hesitated and looked at Gideon for assistance, but he just made a sign telling her it was okay. She took a deep breath and opened it, slowly. Nothing happened. She looked inside and turned it carefully in her hand. It's empty, she said, looking back at Gideon and Sedana with a questioning look. Isn't it brilliant? Sedana asked. That was Taika's idea, but I could probably have thought about it myself, he added. But Brownie was still throwing him an inquisitive look, wondering if she was supposed to clap or just beat him up. Taika sat near her on the bed. You see, if anyone's opened it, it looks like a normal medallion. Pretty inoffensive, she explained. He could even put a picture of his girlfriend inside, said Anna laughed, a bit too loud, making Sahel moan, and Taika threw him another dark look. If Sahel opened it, at the contrary, she continued to explain, he will liberate his dark shadow. Seeing Brownie worried, she added, Of course he will be able to put it back in as soon as it's not needed anymore. You mean that it's magical only for Sahel? Brownie asked. I mean that only Sahel can use it. Other people won't ever know it's magical, except if they test it very carefully, Taika said again. We used a very powerful dissimulation spell on that one. One of my own, Sedan said, proud of himself. I'll give my wand if anyone is able to break it. Taika gave a hint of a smirk. That wouldn't be the first time. Sedana starting to dance from one foot to the other, feeling suddenly uncomfortable. Brownie looked at them, not really sure about what to think of their story. Taika took her hand reassuringly. She was about the same age as Brownie, but seemed so much more mature and confident. There was that thing emanating from her that was making you feel like everything was going to be all right, that a solution would be fine to anything. It's a good one, I assure you. I checked it myself, she said. So did I, Gideon added. Thanks a lot for trusting me so much. I sure appreciate, Sedana said, half complaining, half amused. He knew that this main problem wasn't his lack of talent, but his inability to concentrate on something long enough to finish it completely. When things seemed too easy for him, he was getting bored very quickly. Thank you all, Brownie said, hiding the medallion in the night table drawer. And I trust you, all of you, she added for Sedana. He blushed a little and passed his hand in his messy dark black hair. Don't flatter him too much, Taika said, getting up, or his brain will fly away for good this time. Oh yeah, Gideon said. I remember last time it did, actually. Can you stop that? There is a sick baby in the room, said Anna whispered. He knew that was pretty bad excuse, but still made them stop. Yes, let's go, he needs to rest, Taika said, walking to the door. She turned around to Brownie. By the way, to stop my spell when he gets better, just open the window. Okay, Brownie whispered, looking at the three of them going out. She heard them laugh in the corridor. She would have liked to be able to laugh with them, but there was a little demon in his room who really needed particular attention. In his bubble of warm air, Sahel seems to be warming up a little. Brody was also feeling better to take care of him, now that the temperature of the room was close to normal. She still had to put a jumper on before getting used to this new temperature. Here we go, end of chapter 7. I hope you enjoyed, and personally, I like it better than chapter 6, by a lot. So, anyway, see you next week for chapter 8. Bye!